It may not really seem like it, but Smash Ultimate is getting kinda old at this point. It's not that far off from being a decade old at this point. God, I'm old. But what this truly means is that we are most likely closer to the next Smash game's release than we are to Smash Ultimate's release. But that leaves the question, what will the next game's roster look like? I mean, how can you top the Ultimate roster? Doing the whole everyone is here thing again would not be as exciting as it was last time, and would mean that we probably wouldn't be getting as many new characters. So, I believe the best way to solve this issue is to brace for the worst, as today I will be doing a little logic puzzle and trying to split the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate in half. Now, to go over some small rules, as I said, I will be splitting the roster in half, meaning that each character slot will be counted to make it even. Echo Fighters will be considered their own characters, but the Miis will all be one character, as I don't really see why they would just keep one Mii fighter. That would be kinda silly. We will be going in the roster order that the game provides us, so the order that they were added. Pretty much game to game. But that's enough yapping for me, so let's get going! So let's get the easiest decision out of the way first. Just like every Smash game before it, I believe the original 12 fighters should stay. Those fighters are Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox, Pikachu, Luigi, Ness, Captain Falcon, and Jigglypuff. The only one that could possibly be cut is Jigglypuff, as they were almost cut from BRAWL, and definitely feel the least significant out of the original 12, but it would still feel kinda wrong to exclude any of them from the next entry. And while we are technically done with the original 12 roster from Smash 64, there's one more decision that I think is quite an easy one to make, so I'm going to break our pre-established order real quick to say that I'm going to be cutting all the Echo Fighters. Those fighters are Daisy, Dark Samus, Lucina, Dark Pit, Chrom, Richter, and Ken. While I do enjoy multiple of these characters' additions, I just don't think that keeping clone characters is exactly high on my priority list when it comes to half of the roster being gone. But finally, after those nothing burger decisions, let's get to the real sauce as we head into Melee's roster. Firstly, Peach and Bowser will be staying. Mario is Nintendo's main series, so out of everyone, they get a little more leeway in who stays. The Ice Climbers are staying. They are one of the characters to help represent Nintendo's classic games, and I feel like they have a pretty unique moveset compared to everyone else with their whole tag team fighter thing. Sheik will be getting cut, and Zelda will be staying. I feel like this isn't really a groundbreaking decision. It would be weird to have the same character essentially twice on the roster when we are scaling down this much. And on the same wavelength, Dr. Mario and Pichu will be getting cut. Same reasons as before, alongside the fact that these two could have easily been Ecto Fighters if Nintendo decided so. The first cut in this video that I'm not particularly happy about is Falco. He really feels like a Smash staple, but Star Fox isn't as big of a franchise as it was before. Maybe that will change with its new game on Switch too, but only time will tell. And since Falco's moveset is already a bit of a semi-clone of Fox's, it just doesn't make sense to keep him. Marth stays. He's essentially the poster child of Fire Emblem, so it would be quite strange to cut him. To the surprise of maybe one person, Young Link is cut. Again, having multiple versions of the same character just doesn't really make sense. And to the surprise of maybe like 2 people, Ganondorf stays. If we cut Ganondorf, it would almost be like cutting Bowser. But another surprising cut, at least in my opinion, is Mewtwo. It isn't a secret just how popular Pokemon is. They even have 8 characters in Smash. But that means we can't possibly keep them all. And with our whole thing about keeping the Smash 64 gang all together, we have already 2 Kanto Pokemon, and I just don't think Mewtwo is popular enough to stack up to the other Pokemon who I believe should stay, so sorry champ. Along with Mewtwo, Roy is also being cut. Similarly to Pokemon, Fire Emblem has a pretty sizable character roster in Smash, so some of them have to be cut, and one of those some is Roy. I just don't think he is as popular as the other Fire Emblem reps, and also doesn't have a unique enough moveset to warrant staying over others. Finally, rounding out Melee's roster, we have Mr. Game & Watch. I believe he should stay. He's another good rep for old Nintendo, and possibly the series' most unique looking fighter, and on top of the fact that he's a fan favorite, to the point where he got a pretty notable reference in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. But all in all, that's it for Melee. A lot of this game's roster is made up of some semi-clones or flat-out clone characters, But as we will go on, we'll start to see a lot less of that, starting with Brawl's roster starts off with two characters staying, that being Meta Knight and Pit. Both of these seem like Smash mainstays at this point. Kirby is ever popular, and hopefully the Kid Icarus Uprising Switch port will be real one day. Immediately after this, Zero Suit Samus will be getting cut. Same situation as Sheik, doesn't really make a lot of sense to keep her here, with normal Samus still in the roster. Wario stays in the roster as he is both a Mario character and treated as his own separate series in Smash, as there are a lot of games that star him, with both the Wario Land and WarioWare franchises. Snake is our first non-Nintendo character in the Smash series, and also the first to be cut. He just doesn't seem that likely to come back in the first place, as there have been licensing issues regarding him appearing in Smash, along with the fact that we don't really want to prioritize third-party characters. This is a Nintendo game after all. Alongside Snake, we have a string of 3 cuts, that being Ike, Diddy Kong, and Lucas. Ike is pretty much the same reasoning as to why Roy was cut. Diddy Kong is a cut that I didn't really want to make, but we are starting to load up on Mario characters, so he was on the chopping block. Lucas is a character that has barely made every Smash game since his debut, it feels like. He only got added in DLC in Smash 4, and if it weren't for the Everyone is Here thing in Ultimate, I think he would have likely been cut. Nintendo seems to just refuse to acknowledge Mother 3 outside of Japan. The Mother series hasn't really had anything new in forever, and unless that changes anytime soon, I don't think Lucas is going to stay. Oh, Pokemon Trainer stays as well. What, you really think they're gonna cut Charizard? They've shown they would rather completely delete the rest of the fighter before they have to lose him. To counterbalance our string of 3 cuts, we have 3 characters that get to stay, those being Sonic, King Dedede, and Olimar. Out of every third-party character in this roster, I think Sonic is the most likely to stay. Sega and Nintendo have been pretty good buds with each other for a while, and no matter how bad some of the games he's in may be at times, he is ever popular. King Dedede is a Kirby character, and I think Sakurai is going to try his hardest to keep his babies in the game. Also, it helps that Kirby is one of the most popular franchises Nintendo has, you know? Pikmin has never been Nintendo's most popular series, but it's managed to stick around, and I don't see why Olimar wouldn't stick around in Smash as well. If Pit's staying, then Olimar definitely is. Lucario is our second Pokemon to be cut from the roster. I think it's just that he isn't as high priority to the Smash team as some of the other Pokemon, and he doesn't fill a niche like some of the others do. Right after Lucario, we have Rob, who is definitely staying. They're pretty similar to Mr. Game & Watch, to where it's not like they're a video game icon, but they are obviously very important to the fan base. And like Mr. Game & Watch, he also got a pretty big reference in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Finally, rounding out Brawl, we have 2 more cuts, that being Toon Link and Wolf. I've already said everything I would about these two that I would have needed to with Falco and Young Link, but that means we have gone through Brawl's entire roster, and we can move on to Super Smash Bros. 4. For an actual surprise of, I think, everyone, I will be cutting Villager. As a bit of a spoiler, I guess, for the rest of the video, I will be keeping Isabelle as the sole representative of Animal Crossing. As well, yes, Animal Crossing is a super popular series, especially after New Horizons. I don't think they necessarily need 2 characters in a roster that's going to be cut down as much as this. But honestly, in actuality, Nintendo will probably keep both moving on to the next Smash game. But in this hypothetical that I made up, I say we get rid of Villager. Next, we will be keeping Mega Man, as along with Sonic, they are a character who sort of just fits alongside the rest of the Nintendo cast, as well being a pretty important character in gaming history, yada yada yada. But right after this, we have 3 more cuts, that being Wii Fit Trainer, Rosalina, and Little Mac. Wii Fit Trainer is another one of those characters that I would love to keep, but I just don't think they're relevant enough nowadays to stay above other characters. This also goes for Little Mac, though I could see Little Mac getting a new game or just being favored enough to stay in, but not in my roster. Rosalina is a very popular character, even having a whole Mario Galaxy movie come out recently, but we already have quite a bit of Mario representation, and I just don't see her beating out any of the other Mario reps already in here. After this, we have 2 characters staying in, that being Greninja and the Mii Fighters. Greninja is one of the most popular Pokemon. I mean, that's true for all the Pokemon reps here, but he's also a much more modern Pokemon and fills a ninja niche that isn't really represented in a roster after we cut Sheik. Alongside this, I feel like the Miis are kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it's an easy way to have tons of characters represented, and with Tomodachi Life, they are more popular than ever. Palutena is our next cut, as even though she's a super fun character, Pit already feels like he barely made it onto this roster. Another Kid Icarus character just doesn't seem in the cards when we're cutting this many characters. After her, we have Pac-Man, who is staying. I mean, come on, he is one of the most popular gaming characters, with the only ones above him on the roster probably being Mario, Pikachu, and maybe Steve from Minecraft. It would be weird to cut him. Alongside Pac-Man, Robin and Shulk are staying. Fire Emblem is popular enough to warrant more than just Marth staying, and Robin is from the game that revitalized the series, alongside having a pretty unique moveset, so I feel like they have enough of a reason to stay. Shulk stays as Xenoblade to this day is a pretty popular franchise. They have 3 games now, and he has a pretty unique moveset to go along with it. After this, we will be cutting both Bowser Jr. and Duck Hunt. Bowser Jr., like Rosalina, is a popular character, but I just can't warrant them after having this many Mario characters already on the roster. Duck Hunt is honestly sort of similar. We already have a couple characters to represent classic Nintendo, so I just don't really see them as a worthy addition to this point. Now, we are moving on to the end of Smash 4 with its DLC. First up, we have Ryu and Cloud, who both get to stay as they are very important video game characters. Final Fantasy is super popular, they have like 15 entries now? And Ryu is practically the face of fighting games. So out of all the third-party characters, he's one who's kind of a no-brainer. But after this we have Corrin. Corrin's cool, I guess. Not cool enough to stay, but cool. You've heard me talk about all these Fire Emblem characters, you get the gist. Finally, we have Bayonetta, who is kinda a Nintendo character. Not sure about all the legal stuff, but I think she's popular enough of a character to stay in, and she is still getting new games to this day, unlike, I don't know, Duck Hunt. But at last, we have reached the game that sparked this whole debate, and to start off, we have an easy confirm for staying, that being Inkling. Splatoon has quickly become one of Nintendo's flagship titles, and with them getting their 4th game this summer, honestly, I'd be quite surprised if they don't have another fighter by the time we get to the next Smash game. After them, we have Ridley, who is very sadly getting cut. I really hoped I could find room for him, but I just didn't really have anyone who I could swap out for Ridley. If there was room for another character or two, he would have been one of the first I would turn to. Alongside this, I will be cutting both Simon and King K. Rool. Castlevania is a popular franchise, yes, but I don't think it's popular enough as a third-party franchise to be featured in Smash. If Castlevania was a Nintendo-made franchise, Simon probably would have made it in over someone like Ice Climbers, but I think the Nintendo franchises have priority. King K. Rool is in a pretty similar situation to Ridley, where I would love to keep them in as a Mario-adjacent character, but I couldn't really find someone I think they should go over. But I do think he has a pretty good shot of getting in the actual next Smash game, especially after Donkey Kong Bonanza did pretty well for itself. To end Ultimate's base roster, we have 2 fighters. Isabelle, who I already touched on during Villager's segment as becoming Animal Crossing's sole representative, but alongside her I will be cutting Incineroar. And honestly, it either feels like it was Incineroar, Greninja, or Lucario for the last Pokemon slot, and I think Greninja just beat them both out, and that's that. Starting off Ultimate's DLC, we have Piranha Plant. Piranha Plant will be getting cut. I mean, come on, there was no way in hell Piranha Plant was making it. They were great as a joke character in Ultimate. Hell, they might even have a shot of making it into a future Smash game. But when cutting down the roster this much, we don't really have room for Piranha Plant. Continuing the DLC, we have 2 JRPG reps, that being Joker and Hero. Both of them are staying. Shin Megami Tensei and Dragon Quest are some of the biggest RPG series, and I think both of them deserve spots on the roster. Either of these two could be replaced by a different character in the series by the time the next game comes out, but even still, I think both series are popular and influential enough to stay. To balance out our 2 new entrants, we have 2 cuts, that being Banjo and Terry. Banjo is pretty similar to Simon as a character that if they were Nintendo franchises, they would have probably made it on the roster, but just doesn't have enough sense to have more priority over Nintendo's own history as a older retro character. Terry also just doesn't really fill enough of a niche to warrant being here alongside Ryu as another fighting game character. Next we have Byleth, who is our last Fire Emblem character to be added into our roster, and our last character of Wave 1. Three Houses is the best-selling Fire Emblem game to date, and Byleth is a pretty interesting moveset compared to the rest of the Fire Emblem lot, allowing them to stay in our roster. But Byleth caps off the first wave of DLC. Now we go into our last set of characters with Wave 2. First off, I will be cutting Min Min. Unless a sequel to ARMS gets randomly announced soon, it kinda seems safe to say that ARMS as a franchise is kind of dead in the water at the moment, as it underperformed financially and kinda failed to gather much of a player base. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the best-selling game of all time, Minecraft, with Steve. Yeah, no, Steve is staying. Steve broke social media with his announcement. It's like saying no to free money and publicity. Also, you know, Minecraft's like a really important game to video game history or something like that. Blah, blah, blah. Now my eagle-eyed viewers out there looking at this tier list might realize that in order for the roster to be halved, the rest of the characters will need to be cut. And that is correct! Sephiroth, Pyra and Mithra, Kazuya, and Sora are all being cut. Sora and Sephiroth are being cut because Square Enix and Disney don't exactly seem like the best to be licensed with, and we already have a Final Fantasy rep on the roster. Shulk works as our Xenoblade rep, and I don't really see another one being absolutely necessary, so Pyra and Mithra will get the boot. Lastly, Kazuya, like Terry, just doesn't really seem to fit the roster enough to warrant him staying. But even if we ended on a bit of a sour note, our final roster is done. I think that while we had to make a lot of cuts, I think we still have a good grasp on the essence that a Smash roster usually has, you know? I think that it goes to show that while we are missing half of the roster, there's still quite a bit here. So, all in all, I think no matter how the next Smash Games roster turns out, it's still probably going to be a great time. My name's Versanite, and I really hope they add Toad to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because that would make me pretty happy. Bye bye!